So, welcome to another episode of the Growth Talk podcast. My name is Adam Gullett. I'm the host. And you know what? In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the importance of leaders being willing to show their weaknesses and why it could be one of the best ways to really help others. Welcome to the Growth Talk podcast, where we discuss business growth strategies, personal development, and leadership from a Christian worldview. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to another episode of Growth Talk. My name is Adam Gullett. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate it. So today, I'm going to be talking about why it's so important for leaders to be willing to show their weaknesses. You know, a lot of people think that they need, to put on a front and act like they have everything together. But really, that's not true. People want to see that you're human too, and that you're not perfect. So in this episode, I'm going to break down the reasons why it's important for leaders to be vulnerable and open up about their weaknesses. But first, let me talk about kind of a little bit about myself and how this episode came to be. It came from a conversation I was having with one of my friends in a position of leadership, talking about the stress of being a leader faced with people that are having issues and difficulty and needing him to be strong. While at the same time, he was very weak in that moment. But he made this comment to me that being a leader, I really can't show that I'm weak to those that I'm leading. I have to be strong for them. And that made me even think about myself when he made that comment. So I think there's a common belief that is true. I think we as leaders perceive that to be able to be strong leaders, we have always got to be in this position of strength and confidence and the place that your people can come to find the comfort. And for the most cases, I would say that's probably true in certain circumstances, but leaders are human too. And I would have to say I agreed with my friend on almost all of these points. I felt like even in my own experiences that was true, that I felt like I could never show my own weaknesses. And really trying to understand and learn from that it is okay to show my weaknesses has been a journey for sure, and one that I am still absolutely on. It's a hard one sometimes to just be vulnerable to those that look up to you so much. But in reality, though, isn't that what they really kind of want? They want relationship. How can a leader truly serve those that they lead if they put on a front that they've always got everything put together, that everything is perfect and great and good to go, and they've just got life figured out? And is that a true picture of reality that you as a leader are painting towards the people that are following you? Are you in a position where you're putting yourself on a pedestal at the same time things are falling apart? And if I was to think back when I was young and in a position of leadership, I bought into that idea. I felt like I needed to always be this person that had it all figured out, that they could come to and confide in, and they would find strength in, and I always had the encouraging word. But at the same time, when I was going through that, I was struggling. I was going through pain and loss and financial hardship and just you name it, the things that we go through in life. And I wasn't sharing those experiences with those around me. So in essence, they put me in a position of this person that I really wasn't. So I wasn't real to them. And to be honest, I think that's a very dangerous position to be in as a leader, because then when things do get difficult, you don't know who's there to help, support, and that you can trust. And you put up this fake wall. And that wall can be a very hard thing for those that are following you to break through. And it will put you in a position where they won't confide in you, and you're really not truly leading them. Then you're not able to speak from personal experiences because you've put up this persona that you've got it all figured out. Therefore, you can't be vulnerable, and so they won't come to you with their problems. They'll go to each other or others outside of where you are. And to be honest, if you're truly going to lead somebody, you've got to be able to be a relational type person first and foremost. Otherwise, they're not going to follow you anyway. So I think being vulnerable is key. So that's kind of the story about how this kind of came about. This episode is a conversation with my friend talking about his leadership position and his weaknesses. And then in turn, it made me self-reflect on myself. Like, I need to be more vulnerable. I need to expose some of my weaknesses and things that I'm struggling with those that I lead, and be honest and transparent and those type of things. So it's a challenge for sure. It's anti what we want to do as humans, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to appear weak because we're afraid someone's going to exploit that. We're afraid someone's going to take advantage of that. And some of that might be true, but in reality, though, by being vulnerable and transparent and there for others, we're able to have true relationships and then truly see into other people's lives and figure out where, we can help and serve them and them in turn. And that goes back to the biblical definition of iron sharpening iron. And that is very, very important. So with that being said, I'm going to get into 5 reasons why I think leaders should be willing to show their weaknesses. So let's get straight into that. So here's one that I wrote down. This is number 1. Leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can earn the trust of those around them. The brain is constantly looking for clues about a person's character. When you're interacting with somebody, it's absorbing and checking and it's watching that person's and figuring out the character of that person to make a judgment call about whether or not to trust them. So leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can earn the trust of those around them by being vulnerable and authentic. And this itself will allow followers to see that the leader is human, just like them, and that they have made mistakes in the past as well. And so when people feel like they can relate to their leader, they are more likely to trust them and be influenced by their actions. So leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can earn the trust of those around them. So being vulnerable and authentic will teach your followers that you are human. When people feel like they can relate to their leader, they are more likely to trust them. Leaders who show weaknesses might also win the respect of those around them, and people are more likely to be influenced by someone that is transparent with their feelings. Number 2 is this. Leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can build better relationships with their team members. We all have weaknesses that we've had to learn how to deal with. It's not always easy, but by recognizing them and working on improving them, you can build stronger relationships with with your team members. When leaders are willing to show when you're willing to show your imperfections, they will inspire the people around you, and rather than make themselves feel vulnerable, they'll feel inspired to be around you because of that, which is actually what makes for a better leader long term. Number 3 is this. Leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can learn from their mistakes. Admitting and learning from our mistakes is very, very hard, but it does make us stronger in the long run. And leaders that are willing to be vulnerable, they can show their followers that they aren't perfect either. And this can create a more trusting relationship. Again, we're focused on relationship here, which is a true relationship between leader and follower, right? It's a relationship. The leader should be serving. And so by sharing your mistakes with others, you open up the opportunity for them to share theirs with you. You don't have this wall that's built up where they don't feel like they can share with you because you don't ever share with them, and they don't really know who you are. They don't trust you. So again, leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can learn from their mistakes. Number 4, leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can become more humble and approachable. So humility and approachability are 2 traits that leaders can cultivate by being vulnerable and sharing the weaknesses with those they lead. When people know they can trust their leader, they are more likely to follow them anywhere. So humility and approachability. I don't think we give enough attention to the humility aspect of leadership. We tend to put ourselves, in a position of leadership. Therefore, I've got to have it all put together, and therefore I'm not going to be humble to those that are in my care. And I think that's detrimental to true, God-fearing leadership. And number 5 is leaders who are willing to show their weaknesses can be more authentic and genuine. Leaders who are vulnerable can be seen as more authentic and genuine to their followers. This is because they are not trying to put up a facade or pretend to be someone they're not. Instead, they share their weaknesses and allow followers to see them as humans with all of their flaws. And I think that is very, very important, that the people that you are leading can see that you are human and that you do have flaws. So if we go back to the whole premise of this, if we adhere to the idea that as leaders we can't show weaknesses, we in essence are going to be putting up some major walls that is going to limit the growth of not only ourselves, but those that we lead. So being relatable, being authentic and genuine, being willing to show our weaknesses, being humble and approachable is very, very much important to the overall leadership ability that we have, that we've got to cultivate and develop. And we have got to address our weaknesses and show those weaknesses to others. And that brings us to iron sharpen iron, right? Here's some quotes for you. Jean Vanier, growth begins when we begin to accept our own weakness. Edmund Waller, stronger by weakness, wiser men become. Zig Ziglar, try to look at your weakness and convert it into your strength. That's success. The difficult thing is that vulnerability is the first thing I look for in you and the last thing I'm willing to show you. In you, it's courage and daring. In me, it's weakness. Breen Brown. All right, so leaders who are willing to be vulnerable and show their weaknesses can gain trust from their team. When people know that you're human too, they'll be more likely to open up and share their own weaknesses with you. This creates a space of safety and vulnerability in which people feel comfortable taking risks because they know that the leader won't judge them. And finally, leaders who are vulnerable can model humility for their team, which is an essential character trait for anyone in a position of authority. So, I'm curious, what did you think of this episode? You know what? Please reach out to me and let me know. Do you agree with my points, or do you even disagree with some of these points? Should leaders show their weaknesses? Is this something you agree with or don't agree with? I would love to hear from you. Also, if you found some kind of value in this, consider subscribing to get notified of all future episodes so that you don't miss out on any important leadership insights. I would very much appreciate it. And I'm very interested in growing a community with you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of Growth Talk. If you have a question or comment you would like to share, please email them to askadamtoday@gmail.com. If you enjoyed listening, please consider subscribing to Growth Talk. Also, be sure to rate us everywhere you listen to podcasts. It truly does help. And remember to be bold, keep learning, and be relentless in your pursuit of truth.